Hey everyone, my name's Euan. I'm here to talk today about my South Coast 40k GT winning list. This is my second vlog, and just so people are aware of the format, in this video I'll be focusing on my list, and then in the other 5 videos that are part of this playlist I'll go through each of those games. There is about 30 photos of each game. So if you're looking for something a little more visually interesting, those are probably the place to start. And I'll be trying to talk about, why I deployed the way I did, what I was trying to do in each game, and how things were making, what either I would do differently or what I thought my opponent should have done differently in the various games. As for my list, I wanted to run CSM. I kind of always want to run CSM. I think they're one of the most fun armies, one of the most tactically engaging armies, and they've always been one of the most thematically coolest armies for me. I haven't been able to run them for a while, basically because of team events and other people that are called them, and selfishly forced me onto Death Guard, which also went very well. so I can't complain. But for my list, the other reason I wanted to run CSM was that at the start of the edition, I was running a very possessed heavy build, and I thought it would be quite fun to finish the edition with a very possessed heavy build. Hence the name. So possessive sort of cropped up through various Chaos armies throughout the edition. I've always believed they're best in Pack-Bound Zealots, and that is because the sheer damage they can put out, they're not quite as fast as they are in, say, Renegade Raiders or Creation of Bile, but their damage combo is unbelievably high. So for those that don't know, Possessed have a once-a-game ability to do devastating wounds, and Pack-Bound Zealots has the stratagem that a unit with Chaos Undivided can re-roll wounds. So what happens with Possessed that have 40 attacks, because they're undivided, as long as you pact, you get reroll ones to hit, and so you end up with 40 attacks that are hitting on 3s, strength 5, AP 1, 2 damage, but if you're hitting a target that you really care about, you can do dev wounds and fish for dev wounds on those attacks. So you do somewhere between 20 and 24 devastating wounds if you've got the full squad going in. Initially, I really like Possessed, ironically, as a counter to Catan, because even though they're -1 damage, the sheer volume of damage they did to Catan ended up with about 8 wounds worth of damage after Feel No Pain and the -1 damage, and saves and everything. And that meant as long as you could chip away a little of them before, when there were only 9 wounds, you'd end up with a really effective threat of them. Now, when Catan got their buff, it made Possessed much worse, because rather than nearly kill one, obviously, it put them down to about half strength, which was good. But it turns out that Defilers coming in rather help solve that problem. So that was the sort of core idea that the list built around: the melee aggression of Possessed being a massively high damage dealing unit and a relatively tanky one. They're toughness 6, they've got 3 wounds, they've got a 5 pin fun save. So you get this really nice brawler unit, and that's backed up by the Defilers, that are this very effective shooting unit. So that was the core idea of the list, and everything else is sort of working around the list, serving that, either picking generically good units or chaff pieces to fill a specific role in those lists. So with that in mind, I also, just to explain the title, I've never really rated Abaddon that highly this edition. He's very expensive, he promotes a very slow castly playstyle, which I always find to be quite dull. It works quite well on GW boards where things are a little bit more open, but on primarily UKTC boards where there's a bit more terrain and a little less ability to see from like one deployment zone into the other, it's a little less effective, I find. I played one game against Luke, who will come up later in this video, and with Abaddon, and I just did not enjoy running him. I preferred having more units and more ways to be aggressive. So as for the list, I've got quite a few characters. When I started doing CSM at the start of the edition, I quite often ran one, which was Cypher. Cypher's amazing. He's low op. He's got some decent little shooting attacks, but most importantly, he's got a 12-inch vector aura to make CP costs 1 higher, and that makes them a really, really effective either utility piece, and it just changes a lot of combat matchups. So things like World Eaters being able to say, either you haven't managed your CP very well and you're not going to be able to interrupt, or you can't do, say, -1 damage and an interrupt. Just changes particularly combat matchups, and worst case scenario is 90 points. Unit that you can stick on objective and force someone closer. So yeah, Cypher's awesome. Euan Blackheart, obviously very powerful combat piece this edition. Gives you a bit of utility. He and his Master Maelstrom have a reactive move. They do some mortals. They allow a redeploy. I forget which unit gives which exactly. But he's a really nice hammer package. He went alongside some Chosen in every game, just to address something that's a little weird and non-intuitive. You can sort of double up on a mark on a Chosen squad for reasons that are quite dumb and silly. But essentially the Masters of the Maelstrom don't follow the character rules, so they can join a unit with a different mark. They come with Undivided. Chosen have Slanesh. Huron's allowed to join the Masters of the Maelstrom because now that squad has the Undivided keyword. It is a very stupid interaction. It didn't really ever matter in this, but in case people are wondering how you get an Undivided unit in a Slanesh, there's one cheeky way to do it. Kravik Morn, reasonably new inclusion. I always like having a deep strike threat available. He is awesome, and I only played with him once or twice before I realised that this guy's just better than Raptors. For that role, he hits harder, he fits into smaller gaps. His Flamer is really reasonably nasty. It's D6 plus 3, strength 6, 1, 2. But if you're shooting the closest eligible target, it becomes 6, 2, 2. And if he can get full rerolls to wound very easily, either via his own ability, or because he's Undivided just through the strat. Round out the characters, we have 3 Trench Enforcers with Mark of Nurgle. Mark of Nurgle is mostly because there's a strat in Pac-Man Zealots to give him a Mark of Nurgle unit level up 18. This typically comes up with the Defilers. It's one of the things that makes them so powerful. It came up, or the threat of it came up in just about every game for them. But again, having units with Mark of Nurgle that you can put on objectives and then force the opponent closer for fear of the strat is a really powerful ability. And Traitors Enforcer are just a nice, cost-effective package because they use the Traitor Ogre and Toughness, so they're Toughness 6. They've got 7 damage, 2 attacks between them, and if you take the wounds on the Traitor Enforcer first, they get a 4 for no pain, which, as they're not part of a squad, doesn't matter about the sort of bodyguard thing. So they're not hard to kill, but they're annoying to kill, and they feel that sort of Chaos Spawn role of just going out, doing an action, sitting on an objective, forcing the opponent closer, and skirmishing with little things. They never really did any damage over the event. Quite often I regretted using Chaos Pacts with them, so they'd take a few mortals, and even though it didn't ever materially matter, just leaving them to have more wounds to just be an annoying package to deal with. That was nice. Not a lot of battle line, 2 cultist troops, again Mark of Nurgle, just so they could be blown up potentially, and they would jump on an objective and die typically. 1 unit sat at the back, 1 unit would often screen and do an action, and that would be about it. Chaos Rhino, Mark of Slanesh, held the Chosen and Masters of Maelstrom and Huron package, gave the unit a nice advance and charge threat, gave another source of durable wounds, and has a little bit more utility than the Possessed as well, so a little bit more scalpel to the Possessed hammer. They were probably the most disappointing unit of the weekend, just because of how well a lot of the units did in this list. They are phenomenal units, but if I was looking to shave some points, I'd potentially look at downgrading these 2 Legionnaires. 2 Defilers with a standard loadout for Defilers, at least outside of Death Guard, at least. So they have las cannons, they have excruciating cannons, they have plasma, so they have a really strong anti-tank package, and the excruciating cannons are 12 shots at 612, so they can chip away at sort of marine equivalent bodies quite handily as well. Masters of the Maelstrom, they went with Huron on the Chosen. Again, very nice units. They had a lot of utility, they had a lot of wounds, they had a lot of jank. They have a revive and things like that, so they very nice. Possessor mentioned up at the top. They are just a really, really nice brawler piece. And when I was trying to work out what to play for this event, I was messing around with a few lists, and then I went back to double Possessed Brick, and I just love them to pieces. They're such a good unit. They work so well with what the red list is trying to do. They give a really nice dimension. They can be used as an aggressive piece. They can be used as a tempo piece. They can be used as a trading piece in some matchups. It's not really what this list is designed for. They're more designed to be a hammer piece to go and finish the game. But they can set the tempo if the opponent gives you a nice early target. And especially if you go and send one out, the opponent has to commit very heavily, and the second one can often come and punish the opponent's spots. Finally, to round this out, Red Corsair Raiders. They're a really interesting unit because I looked at them at first value and thought, oh, the Infiltrator is nice, but they're not very good. And that's kind of true, but they fill a niche that CSM really lack. CSM don't have a lot of Infiltrator units, and these are Infiltrators with 2 OC and 3 wounds. So they skirmish really well. They protect objectives from a lot of opponents' sort of fast, early skirmishing pieces as well. And even if they lose 1 or 2 to something, it's not the end of the world because they've got 3 wounds and they've got 5 bodies and they've got lots of OC. So previously something like, let's say, a Tyranid Lictor sits on an objective and you've either got to run a tank up next to it so it gets within 12, or you have to charge it with something. You don't really want a Legionnaire unit charging it because it fights first and it kills 4 of them, and the last one may or may not kill it, and it's sort of quite a bad trade. Red Corsair Raiders, they can charge it, they'll lose 1 most likely, they might lose a second, and then they kill it and trade. So even though they're a lot more expensive unit than Legionnaires, and they are less effective, and they're much less effective as a damage piece, they just solve a problem that CSM really had. Would I take scouts or something over these if I had access to them? Probably. But they were a really interesting piece, and they scored a lot of points throughout the event. So in Pac-Man Zealots, you've got a lot of damage pieces. You've got a lot of combat to punch. You've got a range punch. You've got some decent durability, and these sort of ended up solving that sort of final piece, which is just securing your objectives, being an upfield threat, doing some screening. And I really like them by the end of the event. So that's the list in general. I'll go through the games in just a second. But that was it. And the game plan generally was use these sort of traitor enforcers and cultist units to force the opponent out, create some sort of nice trading game, and then if they hang back and try and shoot, use the defilers to sort of punish that. And if they try and get more aggressive, then use the Possessed and Huron unit to really punch out, and that sort of ends up being the sort of the base game plan for most of the games I played.